Good afternoon and welcome to the Caregiver Teleconnection. My name is Glenda Rogers and I am going to be your facilitator today. We have with us Dr. Tam Cummings. She's one of our frequent presenters. And today she's going to be talking to children about dementia. And as I said a little bit earlier, in the years that I've been doing this, I have never seen this topic presented, so I'm very interested in it. Is there a representative on with us from Vitas Healthcare, our sponsor today? I don't see Candace's name over here, but she could be on there. Well, I guess either she's running late or something has happened, but let me just say that Vitas Healthcare is our sponsor for today's session, and they provide hospice care in many areas of the country. You can always look up their information, and I will get that up in the chat box a little bit later for you. So we do appreciate their sponsorship. So let me tell you about Tam. Dr. Tam Cummings founded her company in 2009 with the mission to inspire, educate, and empower dementia caregivers. Now her professional gerontological practice in the Texas Hill Country is recognized as one of the leading educators of dementia caregivers and program design for dementia care nationally. Tam, welcome to the session today.
Thank you, Glenda. Thank you, Vitas. Even though Vitas, you're not here, but God bless our hospice folks and all that they do to help families in those final moments. And thank you, Vitas, for being our sponsor. Thank you, WellMed. Always fun to be on here with you, Glenda. So this is a topic that doesn't get talked about a lot. And Glenda, while you were speaking, I actually sent you the handouts, and the handouts are all from Alzheimer's UK, Alzheimer's Canada, Alzheimer's Australia, and they're all handouts about talking to children. But one of the other things is you'll notice we don't have very many participants today. And I did this podcast earlier today to a group that I normally have an audience of over 1,000 at, and we had less than 200 people on there. So the group decided that everybody wants to talk about behaviors, but nobody seems to have thought about that we need to talk to children, teenagers, and young adults about what is happening to their loved one with dementia. So we're just gonna roll along today and go through it and see where we go. So for a lot of family members, there came a point in time where you realized that your loved one, your mother or your father or your spouse, was not safe to be driving the children anymore, even though they insisted they were still driving. And so for families, that begins the start of the thought of a conversation that you might need to have. Or you begin to realize that as much as the kids love to go stay with grandma or grandpa, that it's not safe for them anymore, that you're becoming more and more aware that perhaps your mother or your father is not truly aware that this is a child, that this child needs to be watched out for and tended to. And so you begin to realize that it wasn't even safe to have your child around your parent or your loved one. And you may have begun to think then that you should have a conversation with them. And you might have started to, and then you stopped because of their age or because of what it is, but you should know, and Glenda will back me up on this, and so will Minerva. All humans can tell when something is not right with you. Even total strangers will be able to see that something is not right with you. And when you think about people with dementia, 90% of our communication, Glenda, is done without language and without speech. It is the way we look, the way we move, the tension in our voice, the pitch, edge, the tone of our voice. The children are hearing hushed conversations. They can hear the change in your voice when you get a phone call from the skilled community or the memory care community. They can hear the tears and the crying that you don't think they're hearing, and they're probably dealing with your anger, your frustration, your exhaustion, because by the time you begin to reach out for help, you've been a caregiver for at least 10 years at this point. So you realize that, okay, yeah, we do. We should talk to the kids. But then you begin to think about, well, how old is this child, Glenda? Because the way a 4-year-old processes information is different than from how a 10-year-old or a 15-year-old or a 25-year-old process information. So how will the child understand it? What will the child be afraid of? Do you recognize that that child is grieving and that your own fears, your own guilt, your own grief can impact what you're doing with your child or not doing with your child? Know that your answers require honesty and that there is going to probably be emotion. There may be sobbing, there may be tears, and that is all normal. And from the child, you may get everything from tears to anger to fear. One of the biggest questions is this going to happen to me? And you need to prepare yourself to allow for questions and to teach your child as they ask these questions. We also need to talk about forgiving behaviors, because everything that the loved one is doing is, of course, directly linked to brain damage. So understand that younger children think concretely, although they understand love, pain, sadness, hurt, longing. They understand grief, although they can't put into words what it is they're feeling. They may tell you they physically don't feel good, and the doctor won't be able to find the location for the pain because it's grief. But they can also, Glenda, give us ways to help our loved ones that may have been missed in exhaustion. And when I say that, what comes to mind is a friend of mine who's the marketing director at a memory care community in Pennsylvania. And she and I were talking a few months ago, and she said that parents had called to ask if their young children could come into the community and tour it, because they were going to be placing their great grandmother there, and the great grandmother lived with the family. So the 5-year-old and the 7-year-old have only known life with their Gigi living with them. And the marketing director actually keeps toys in her office for children when they visit. And when the children came in, she asked them, do you have questions about your grandma? And they said, yes, they did. And what was wrong with her? And she explained to her that their grandma's brain was not well, and that it was dying, and that was making her behave differently. And then she said to the little boy, who was 5, tell me something about your grandmother that will help us be better caregivers here. And the little boy said, my grandma loves chocolate chip cookies, and I'm afraid if she's here, nobody will give her chocolate chip cookies. And when you talked further to the parent, you found out that the little boy had figured out chocolate chip cookies soothed his grandmother when she got agitated, or his great grandmother. Wow. And so they actually took the little boy back, and he met the chef, and he met the assistant chef, and he saw where cookies were kept. And I've been told that every time he visits grandma, he also visits the kitchen and makes a cookie run to make sure that he takes his Gigi cookies. She asked the 7-year-old girl, what can we do to help your grandmother or your great grandmother while she's here? And the 7-year-old girl said, my Gigi is always cold. So will you make sure that she stays warm here? And the marketing director said to the little girl, I want you and your mommy to make sure that your Gigi has sweaters. And will you make sure your Gigi's favorite sweater comes here, and you tell us which one's her favorite, her most soft. And so even though families think the kids aren't paying attention, Glenda, they're obviously paying a great deal of attention. And what was so amazing to me about that is the 5-year-old had figured out people with dementia like sweet stuff. Yeah. And the 7-year-old had figured out people with dementia are colder than you and I are. And those are two absolute truths. They are craving sweet things, and they are colder than you and I are. So you can have a very real conversation with them and ask them what they can do, and you'll be surprised at the answers. Now, it's important you have these conversations, because younger children believe that when things happen, in the family unit that it's their fault. They will take on ownership of parents divorcing, that it's their fault, that they've been bad, they've misbehaved. And they will do the same thing with changes that begin to happen cognitively in a grandparent or a parent. Because remember, not everybody who's a young child is talking about having a grandparent with dementia. We have young children who have a parent who have dementia. So if we don't talk to them and explain to them this is brain disease, then they can believe that it's them. Their common worries are that they did something wrong and that's what's caused this, that they have done something that has upset this person with dementia and is now causing this behavior. And even as children, they're worried that they somehow might catch this same thing too. And so common questions from children are going to be difficult to answer, Glenda, if you don't know the answers. If no one's explained to you that dementia is not the name of the disease, dementia is the umbrella term for 128 identified terminal brain diseases. And the name tells you whether it's from a doctor, whether it's the area of the brain itself, frontal temporal dementias and the frontal temporal lobes. It'll tell you what caused it, vascular dementia, something vascular, or it may even tell you what's going to happen. Primary progressive aphasia means the main course of this dementia that only gets worse is the inability to use and understand language or speech. So they're going to ask what will happen to their loved one. They may ask, how did it happen? Can I get it too? Common questions are, why is grandma angry? Why does grandpa repeat himself? And why do they, this person that I've loved and known always is now acting strange or different or weird? Or is this something that I'm doing? So prepare for the discussion by telling your child that you want to talk about the loved one. Give them a moment to breathe and get themselves prepared, and know that the level of conversation you're going to have, Glenda, depends upon the age of the child. Little children, younger children see things very concretely. It's black and white. Grandma died. She went to heaven. We miss her. Let's get on a plane. Planes fly to heaven. We'll go to heaven and get her. Very concrete thinking. And so you need to be prepared for that. Preteens are grieving very much the way you and I are grieving, and they need to see us grieve and know us grieve, that we're grieving and that it's okay. Teenagers may keep things internal. It may be very difficult for you to connect to the teenager. And then young adults, it may be the same thing. And for all of them, they're dealing with post-death grief, or post-death grief, meaning they're grieving for their person as though they had already died. And for the children, for the grandchildren, it's especially difficult because of the relationship grandchildren and grandparents have. So you have to go back to your other lessons about dementia. Why is grandpa different? Well, people with Alzheimer's disease are going to repeat things constantly because they lose their hippocampus early in the disease, and the hippocampus is what makes memory. But people with Lewy body dementia and Parkinson's disease dementia, they don't lose their hippocampus until much later in the disease. People with frontal temporal dementia lose their emotions. And so the children, when you and I are confronted with people who have no emotion on their face and their voice and in their eyes, Glenda, it scares us. So some children may be afraid of a parent who has frontal temporal dementia because it makes you feel uncomfortable. It makes your instincts come to life that there's something very wrong here. Somebody with alcohol dementia, Wernicke-Korsakoff, may behave very impulsively with a lot of agitation. Huntington's folks are more prepared than others because it's in the family gene. And then chronic traumatic encephalopathy, one of the disorders is a mood disorder, and then there is a mixed disorder. So there's going to be behavioral things that are happening there that are related to the type of dementia the person has. People with vascular dementia tend to be more verbally and physically agitated. So the type of the dementia a person has is important for the child because it tells them what it is. It's got a real name. And then the type of dementia tells you what kind of behaviors your child can expect, what behaviors we're going to expect. Answer honestly, but simply for younger children. Older children can handle more detail. Tell them their loved one has a brain disease, and the brain is what makes you, you, and me. It's what allows us to think. It's what allows us to move our body. Don't tell them grandma's brain is sick, because little kids, especially younger children, Glenda, they will take that, and then without meaning to, you will say, oh, you're sick, you have a cold. And what the little child hears is, I'm sick too, grandma's sick, now I'm sick like grandma, now I'm gonna die. So we don't really want to use the word sick, but you want to use the word dementia. It's a disease. And then ask all the children, ask them to think of ways they can help their loved one. And for some, it may be visiting. For others, it may be volunteering with the activity department to do activities with your loved one. For others, it may be cooking for a loved one. For others, it may be just coming by to visit. But it's all very important, part of family. Now, remember that younger children may not have the words to express their emotion, and they may act out in other ways to cope with stress and grief. So your child may tantrum after visiting the loved one because they don't know how else to express the emotions that they're feeling, which could be anything from fear to feeling lost to feeling physically ill because of the loss that they're feeling. And so that inability to express it may mean that schoolwork can suffer, or Glenda, the child may appear totally unaffected, and teenagers may even appear to be uncaring. And that's not the case at all for the teenager. It is what the teenage brain is doing, where it is at development. And if the child appears unaffected or unconcerned or uncaring, then that would need to involve bringing in maybe the school counselor, bringing in maybe a therapist, because the child needs to work through these emotions that are going on with them. Some children are going to be very sad and weepy and are going to need a great deal of attention, but they're going to be able to turn to you, and being able to do that is very important. It's part of human development. It's part of brain development. And it's something that we want to be careful with children, because if we don't explain it to them, what the child knows is that today in this moment, grandpa's happy. And then tomorrow, that very same behavior got grandpa to behave a totally different way. And if we don't explain it to the child, then the child comes away believing their grandpa's a bad, mean person, instead of coming away with the understanding that grandpa loves him, but grandpa has a brain disease. That makes sense, Glenda?
It really does. It's really helpful. Yeah.
So as you think about talking to your children, well, Glenda, one of the reasons you're talking to the children is you need to explain behaviors that they're going to witness. And it's not just angry behaviors or sexual behaviors. The sexual behaviors are actually kind of rare, but it's suddenly grandma curses, and this was never done before. Grandma never missed a day of church. She went to mass every single day. She did her prayers every night. She taught everybody how to pray. Grandma led the family, and now grandma talks like a sailor. It's all due to brain damage. We don't shame them. We just recognize it's the progression of the disease, and it's normal. Preteens are going to have serious questions that require serious answers. They're going to ask you, will this kill grandma? And the answer is yes, this is a terminal brain disease. And their grieving is very similar to how adults do. And we're only now beginning to realize that family caregivers are suffering post-death grief. So are the children. So are adult children. So are grandchildren. So are young children. Everyone is grieving. Preteens need to ask questions, and they may have a lot of emotions due to the relationship of with the grandparent or the parent. The 5-year-old boy and the 7-year-old girl we talked about earlier, their whole life, Gigi has lived with them. Gigi held them and rocked them. They've actually begun to help do part of Gigi's care. So preteens, teenagers Young adults certainly had a relationship with that parent or grandparent. And for so many of us, the relationship with the grandparent is critical to our emotional and self-development. In our country and our culture, the grandmother is the keeper of the family, and the grandfather spends more money at the toy store than anybody else. And that's proven by demographics. Children need to know it's okay to cry and it's okay to grieve. And then they may not want to talk to you again. And then all of a sudden, out of the blue, will come a question that will feel like just a stab at you, because it's such an intimate and emotional question. And it may suddenly come out of the blue, but you've got to answer honestly. You know, the biggest feedback I get from families, Glenda, is that they didn't want to come hear me speak. Somebody drug them there, but they realize now that they needed to hear these hard things. Your children need to hear very hard stuff, but it's part of growing into being an adult. The world is not a clean place. Life is messy and life has pain in it. And if we don't teach them how to deal with that pain and that it's okay to grieve, then we end up with children that don't mature the way that we hope they will. The behaviors, remember, are all kinds of behaviors. And some of these behaviors can be a little freaky if your child witnesses them, especially based on their age. They may see their parent or grandparent having hallucination behavior. And remember those Lewy body hallucinations, one set of them is spiders, bugs, rats, and snakes. They may believe that the child is part of a group of bad guys coming to get them. I've known more than one person with Lewy body who believed one of their children was trying to kill them. There's scatological behavior. People with dementia may pee in a corner. They may pee in a trash can. They may pee on themselves. It's just part of the disease process. The delusions, we call it a delusion, but that's really not accurate, Glenda. To me, a delusion means I have a 3-pound brain and I have a belief that's not real. These folks don't have 3-pound brains. They have a damaged brain trying to make something logical. So your child may be accused of stealing or be accused of being someone that they're not, or be accused of being here and they're not supposed to be. The frontal temporal dementias, remember, those destroy emotion. So empathy is gone. And people with vascular dementia and alcohol dementia may have verbally or physically aggressive behaviors. Sexual behaviors are usually just based on confusion. And then people with dementia fall. They have behaviors because of UTIs. And then any of the activities of daily living can be challenging because, number one, that's intimate care. You're having to place hands on me. And number two, it may hurt because of untreated pain. Other behaviors all fall under either pain, anxiety, or depression, and you have to rule out which one these are. And some of these can be a little scary. Glenda, when people with dementia grind their teeth in pain, they grind their teeth so hard that you can hear them from 30 feet away. You can hear them down the hallway and they're in their room. A person with dementia who has severe untreated pain may suddenly slap, pinch, grab, hit, punch the person who comes up next to them, and that can be a child because of acute pain. They may pick at their skin and cause sores, and they may have disruptive verbalization where they are screaming, no, 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 or you're hurting me, even though no one's touching them. So you have to prepare the children, and kids understand this is caused by brain damage. Preteens really get it, but even little kids can understand that. And for all children, you can ask them to assist in care by play, by doing puzzles, by reading, doing music, singing, dancing, playing, cooking, making memory boxes with their loved one. Any one of those things children can do of all ages. But I think the hard thing to remember, and especially if you're a parent with children of different age, is that the information you give them needs to be honest, it needs to be truthful, it needs to be equal to what they can comprehend and understand. And that is a thing that as parents, you'll make a decision about. Just remember that the younger children, more concrete, preteens, more like adults in their grieving. Teenagers have a lot of brain changes that are happening and hormonal changes that are happening. And then young adults may be so shattered by watching how this grandparent or parent has changed that they have a lot of trouble asking questions. So it falls back on you to have these conversations that equal the age of your child. Now, preteens will help younger children grieve naturally. They will do that, especially if we encourage it. And children are experiencing post-death grief, Glenda, and this is something I think we're not looking at and we're not realizing. And it's because they can't get that person back, and it hurts. Any one of us that have grieved, and if you're on this phone and you're alive, you've grieved something, it physically hurts. And we have to tell children, you may feel funny. This may make your stomach hurt. This may give you headaches. This may make your body hurt. And be aware that all of those things are signs of grief and signs of someone trying to deal with grief. Some teenagers and children will withdraw from family or friends, and we certainly want to make sure we get counseling involved if we see this withdrawal happening, or if you see tantruming happening or some sort of acting out happening. Based on the age of the children, they will need to ask a lot of questions. And that preteen group can ask a lot of questions, Glenda. But the good news is, as hard as these conversations are, they build trust between a parent and a child. And trust is the core of family. Right, Glenda?
Absolutely.
So teens grieve differently. You and I may think they're showing no signs of grief at all, and all they are is on their phone and they're listening to a podcast of another teen talk about their grief. I mean, they are doing things we never thought could happen, but you still want to make sure the counselor knows and the teachers are aware that your child is not having the same year, sophomore year, that the other kids are having, that they need special attention, and that people who are professionals need to be paying attention to them. And it can easily include counseling or at school or therapy. When we have to mention the family, whether you're a young person or a young adult or a middle adult or an older adult, stress, fear, and confusion about your own cognitive future is a very real thing that people fear. And then the slow loss of this person that has been so important to them, and to see this person now become a shell of themselves, or to see this person totally lost as to who they were, can cause your child to have anger and impatience towards others, especially towards the caregiver. And the caregiver could be the family caregiver, which is you, or it could be the professional caregiver, which is me. And I can't tell you how many times we've seen a family member coming and they were so angry in their grief that they were concerning to professionals. So certainly we know that happens with all families as well. They're angry about the fading memories and the loss of the self of the person that they're watching just go away bit by bit. That person who gave them unconditional love, the way only a grandparent gives it, is taken away from them. And their post-death grief is real. It's just that, Glenda, nobody talks about it. I mean, look at this today. There's 12 people on here, and you and I are probably 2 of them. I signed on from another computer as well to help my numbers, so that I'm actually 2 of those. It's important to allow teens and young adults to grieve. It's important to encourage them to grieve. It's important to update them, take them to visit. It's important to use the person's name. And if it's just too much, then that's something that involves another conversation. You know, Glenda, I've done this for more than 30 years. And I've seen families who have said, when I've said it's time to come this weekend, you need to come say goodbye. And the wife said, my husband died 8 years ago, call the funeral home. And I have seen families tell me they couldn't come tonight because they had dinner reservations or they were going to go to the movies. And I've seen every type of excuse in the world, but the reality of it is some people can't handle the pain. So earlier today, I did this same session with a group, and one of the questions was, do I force my teen sons to go visit their father who has behavioral variant FTD? And, you know, on the one hand, you want to teach them to honor their loved one, to honor their father. On the other hand, you've got to educate them about that specific type of dementia. And then we shouldn't be forcing anybody to do anything. We all grieve at our own rate and at our own space, but we want to pay attention to kids. It's important that children are allowed to see you grieve and that they can grieve with you. And being able to do that helps children accept the things that happen in life that are difficult. Life is not fun, Glenda. Life is messy and scary and full of moments that are traumatic. But then it's also full of good stuff. But being able to grieve is something that's critical for children to see from a parent, to have modeled for them from a parent. It changes how they view life if they realize that you grieve too. Glenda, what do you think of this picture? It's powerful, isn't it?
It's extremely powerful, Tam. I don't know. I feel that way sometimes with my grandson. So, yeah.
I pulled it off the internet, and it's two actors, and they actually, after they shot it on this side of the couch, they went and shot it on the other side of the couch. But look at how it makes us feel, because they told the one, clench your hands together and furrow your brow. And so when you look at this picture, you think, oh my God, they're torn up. And it's two actors. Got us again. Now, one of the things that we can easily forget about, Glenda, is not everybody with dementia is a grandparent. And so we have two different things that have happened. One is we have dementias that strike younger people. So we may have children and very young children who have a parent who has an early onset Alzheimer's, who has one of the frontal temporal dementias, a parent who has a Huntington's dementia. We also have another group where the husband married a younger wife and had a younger woman and had children. And now those children are preteens or teens, and their older parent has dementia. So what do we do about them? Because these are kids that are not losing a grandparent. These are kids that are going to lose a parent. So it's very important that we be able to talk to them and understand they don't have anyone else to talk to if we don't talk to them. How many other 8-year-olds do they know who have a father who's in memory care? Or how many other 15-year-olds do they know who has a mother who's in memory care? And so it's very important that we involve our school counselors, our teachers, and professional therapists, and the doctor to make sure that we help children heal and get through these times. Grieving together is important. And Glenda, one of the biggest things I hear from family members is, I don't want to start crying, because if I start crying, then I won't be able to stop crying. And the reality is, yes, you will. You will stop crying, but crying is your body telling you, it's your brain telling you that it needs to get toxin out of the body. When you and I grieve, our brain produces toxic chemicals, and grief tears remove those toxins. And it shows us that this is just part of life. Grieving is part of life. And I think the thing that catches people off guard is that little kids are grieving too. And even when we know the truth of dementia hurts so much, I can tell when I'm talking to families, Glenda, in conferences, I can tell that what I'm saying to them hurts, but they've got to hear it. Otherwise, their loved one won't get the kind of care that they require if we don't tell them what it's going to do. So we've got to reassure each other. We've got to help each other, even when moments are tough. And there are tough moments. One of the ways is help your child remember how their grandparent loved them before. So make a scrapbook for them, make a book for them. You can pull all those images off your phone, load them into your computer program to make a book, and poof, it will make a book. But it will help your child hold on to those memories of the grandparent. And that's the memories we want them to have, is that this person loved you dearly before this disease began to rob them. Teach your children compassionate touch and do it for yourself too. And remember, Glenda, this, we all do this right now. This actually brings your blood pressure down. This actually calms you down as much as it does a child. Putting your hands over your heart help calm you. Putting your hands over your stomach help to calm you. Show your child how to hug themselves if you're not around. And then ask your child to write a letter to their loved one about how they feel, and sit down and write a letter to you at the same time about what a good spouse or son or daughter you've been, because you deserve that. And it will be something you cherish later on. Remember that their loved one still laughs, but some of these behaviors may not be funny. Now, some of the laughter is a polite social chuckle, Glenda, you and I do when we're kind of lost in the conversation. And today's kids don't talk in the same language that this group does. This group didn't talk about the Wi-Fi and the computer and the iPad and the iPhone and the Instagram and the Twitter and the Snapchat and all of that other stuff. And so the grandparent doesn't understand what the child is talking about, and they'll politely chuckle. So teach the child. Grandparents understand, I love English, but my math teacher is a mean guy, and world history is the best, and I'm making a science project. But they don't understand, I'm going with the IES system to study in Japan for a year. That makes no sense. Help your child to recognize that some of the behaviors that their loved one are going to do are related to the dementia they have, or to untreated pain, anxiety, depression, delirium, UTI. Any one of those things can cause behaviors to happen. So tell the children, we can't be embarrassed about this. If your loved one urinates in a corner, that just happens. A trash can on a plant, if they defecate in a sink or a trash can, if they smear feces, even if they eat feces, it's part of the disease process. It's normal. Remind your children that as the brain becomes damaged, grandma doesn't see as well. She's not handing you the clicker for the TV because she literally doesn't see what's right in front of her. It means that you're going to have to teach your children to raise their voice when they talk to their grandparent, because the damage is on the brain and not in the ear, but a lower voice and a louder voice are a little more helpful. Remind them that touch is still very strong, and that, yes, the craving for sweets, either smelling them or tasting them, is what's happened to those senses. Remind them that normal things for humans to do who have dementia is hunting and gathering. That's also something children do. They go from room to room and place to place. They find new things, they play with them, and then they go on to the next thing. And you may have a child who's angry because grandma keeps taking naps in her bed, and that's just called Goldilocking. People with dementia will go from room to room to room, trying out beds until they find one that's just right. It's not a strange behavior, it's just a behavior. Hallucinations, Glenda, can be scary to children because the person with dementia is seeing these things and these things are real. And that can be very frightening to the child if they're not aware that this is something that their loved one does as part of their disease. Challenges with perception, meaning that the brain doesn't interpret shadows, lighting, movement, sound correctly. And so it may cause them to insist to a child that there's a person over in that corner, and the child looks and goes, no, there's not. And then that can cause an interaction. So those changes in their ability to see things and interpret things can cause them to have difficulty. Now, the delusion is a belief that's not real, but people with dementia are really just sort of being logical with the amount of brain tissue that's left. I can't find my purse, Glenda, but you're here. You must have stolen my purse. So children may be accused of stealing medicine or purse or clothing or other things. They may get asked about people who are deceased. They may get told that their grandparent needs to leave the house to go pick up children, and that they need to go home or that they need to go to work. So all of these behaviors that you and I see have to be explained to children. And yes, Glenda, there are some sexual behaviors, but it's usually that a father thinks that his young adult daughter is now his wife because he thinks he's now in his 20s, or a mother with dementia may think that her 20-something-year-old son is actually her husband. It's just brain damage that's causing that to happen. Their files are mixed up. Other things that can cause behaviors that can be scary to children is that people with untreated chronic pain who have dementia will suddenly slap, pinch, hit, strike, or kick someone without any provocation. And that's a sign of untreated chronic pain. And every time I get a phone call on that, Glenda, I ask them to go read me the diagnosis and read me the medication sheets. And there will be pain diagnoses on that chart and no pain medication. Or if there is pain medication, it's PRN only. Then understand that some children become, some people with dementia become more anxious around children. Younger children may be moving too much. There may be too many activities going on. They're jumping from this, they're jumping to that. You're telling them to get down. For other people with dementia, it actually calms them down to be around children. Children don't seem to mind that they're busy doing stuff or that they're behaving in different ways. So you can see either more anxiety or a calmness happen. You've got to prepare your loved one if your person with dementia is asking for a deceased loved one. Then you've got to let your children understand that this is happening because they're going backwards in time through memory and they're looking for someone they love. And so we're going to help the child tell them that the person they're looking for is at the store, gone to the golf course, gone to work, be in later. We're going to help that child be able to get through that. And then depression, Glenda, you've got to remember depression in people with dementia is usually an agitated, annoyed, angry, and aggressive form. And that means that's not a person sitting quietly in a room. That's a person who may be very frustrated and acting out against a child. And then to finish it, we go back to crying actually helps us. Grief is a sign that we loved someone dearly. It's even been called our final act of love, is that we love someone enough that we grieve for them. And then Glenda, because I didn't want to leave you with this little crying girl who has a My Little Cat hat on it, I'm going to leave you with this.
Okay.
Okay.
That's almost as bad.
So,
the dear little heart.
Do we have any questions?
Adele asked a question a little bit earlier, and she was referring to video games and how that might be affecting children to respond appropriately to grief. And do you have any thoughts or any experience with that? And I kind of know what she's talking about. They're so detached.
From like if you listen to them talking about how many people they're killing.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, I've seen that, and it's concerning. The children that I've seen it with, though, seem to be able to make a break between reality and the video game. But I don't quite know how to answer that question, except I know that today's child, by the time they reach 16, has witnessed over, oh, it's an unbelievable number, Glenda. It's something like 500,000 murders on television and movies.
Yeah, huge. And a video
It's
game.
Unbelievable.
Some of them pop up on
And
my screen, and I'm appalled. You know, just because they're zombies, you know, they're still shooting and killing these people. A couple other questions that came to me. Have you found any books or learning aids related to dementia on a child's level? that people
Actually, Glenda, but as we were starting, I was sending you the handouts, and y'all are getting 3 handouts that come from Canada, the UK, and Australia, and they're all designed for children, things to do with children. And one of them includes a list of books talking to children about dementia. If you just Google books for children on dementia, you'll get a lot of things back. But in your handouts are some specific tips about what we covered today.
Good. And the other thing that came to mind, if this is my personal feeling and opinion, if individuals are able to teach their children, primarily, I guess I'm talking about preteens and teens, to put their phone down when they're around that grandparent, that parent that has dementia, that it's an opportunity to learn so much. And if you're looking at your phone like this, you aren't learning much about that person, that they're going to be gone, and you want to have that relationship. And if you have that phone in front of you, so when you walk in the room, have a basket, leave that phone at the door so that you can interact with that person with dementia. It'll help them and it'll help you too. That was my personal opinion.
Absolutely.
Anybody have any questions or comment? I did post in the chat box how to reach Tam, and she really does like to hear from you. That does not saying that she's going to call you back within 15 minutes. She's a busy lady and traveling, doing presentations, but she will call you back. I see we have one person that did phone in today, and so let me read that phone number out to you. It's area code 254-216-3668, and that's Tam's phone number if you want to get a hold of her. Does anybody have a question or a comment? Have you had any experience with your children or with others dealing with dementia, of a grandparent, a parent, just, you know, an acquaintance? It could be any of the above.
There was an echo and crickets. You know, there's actually one of the books, Glenda, lets you personalize it for your child. So
Excellent.
It can be made for a boy or a girl. It uses their name and it uses the grandparent's name. So there is some very helpful stuff out there. It's just that it's not a very popular topic.
Well, and you know, as we that are baby boomers age in such a huge number, I'm thinking that those numbers of children dealing with this topic are going to grow exponentially. And so I think it will be becoming a more popular topic. We have a couple of questions. Guinevere, why does the person with dementia, and I'm not sure I understand this word, scrap up to sinks, desks, and cleans intensely?
Why does she do what?
It's spelled SCRATH, and I'm not familiar with that word, Guinevere. I'm so sorry, but they're going up to sinks and desks and they're cleaning intensely, and so I think that would have to be with type of dementia.
Yeah, this is a common thing to see in dementia. Is especially ladies will start cleaning things. They'll even get down on carpet and pick up lint.
Wow.
So it will pass. It's just a behavior.
So it's where the damage is in the brain during that period of time that causes that behavior. Yeah.
So if you go into a nursing home or a memory care and you see ladies with a cloth doing this at the tables, they're not really clean. The tables have been cleaned. They've just been given a cloth to do that with because it is a behavior that we see.
Okay, and I see Guinevere has raised her hand so that she can probably explain more. Go ahead, Guinevere.
No, Tam addressed it very well.
Okay.
But Dr. Cummings, can you determine what stage they're in at that point when they're doing those things?
That's a stage 5, late stage 5 person.
From being on your workshops for 5 years, I had already determined that, but I'm glad I heard that from you.
Yes, ma'am. That's a very common behavior to see. And what's astonishing is they're vision impaired and they clean better than today's teenagers. Okay, I said it out loud. I did it. I said it out loud, Glenda. Yeah.
I'm not going to tell my grandson you said that. Okay.
No, but that's not unusual to see, and I think we really see it in ladies who kept a very clean house. We see them doing that dusting motion.
Yeah.
It so happened to be my husband. I was the cleaner, but now he's taken over all that.
Wow.
Well, he's watched and learned, and ma'am, I bow down to your ability to train that husband. Good for you.
That is probably the only benefit that I have heard recently.
No, you don't want this kind of cleaning.
Thank you, Guinevere, so much for sharing that.
Thank you.
Molly, other than laughing and crying at us, she said, just a thought, opening the conversation to kids can make them feel like they have more control in the relationship. Excellent. Excellent.
It empowers your child. And I found out that kids at high school really do discuss dementia. My friend's son sent me a message. They were having a discussion during lunch, him and his friends, and he was telling them that dementia is not the name of the disease, it's the umbrella term. And they were arguing with him that one's grandma had dementia and one's grandma had Alzheimer's. And he was wanting to get the record set straight. So kids are talking about it, but they need to talk, they need to be able to have that conversation with their parent. Yeah. Because it's just going to be so critical.
I think it's a lot like having the sex talk because you need the right information and it needs to be the right nomenclature and you got to name things right. And so I kind of relate it to that when you're talking to that age of child. Oh, Molly, she explains that she's a dementia care specialist in Fort County and will be going into school soon to discuss it. And so that is really Forest. I'm sorry. Yes, you did correct that. Forest County. What state is that, Molly? Anyway, she's going into schools to teach that. That's fabulous. In Wisconsin.
Really?
In Wisconsin.
Well, hello, cheeseheads.
Absolutely. I've never heard of anything like that here in Central Texas. Yeah, she's go Pack go. All right. She probably does have one of those cheeseheads. Thank you so much, Molly, for sharing with us. Anybody else have a question or a comment?
Did Molly actually bring up the Pac-12?
She did. Or either that.
Can you remove her from our list?
No, Molly, I won't do that. I
think she's
we are only rooting for Baylor this year.
And she's saying laugh out loud. Well, I was on the phone on one of these sessions earlier this week, and we had that discussion, and our speaker was from Waco, but not from Baylor. And I said, well, how are they going to do this year? And she kind of acted like, yeah, she didn't know what I was talking about. She doesn't follow football. She got burned out when she was married to a coach.
And I think Molly was referring to Green Bay Packers.
Oh, the Green Bay Packers. Well, at any rate, thank you, Minerva. You're always in the background helping us out. Well, let me tell you a little bit about what's coming up on the Caregiver Teleconnection, and I'll leave a couple of minutes at the end in case you think of something you'd like to ask or discuss. So I'll be back with you on Tuesday, September the 6th. Oh, where is the year gone? That's at 11 o'clock Central Time. And Evelyn, another one of our frequent presenters, is going to be back with us. We're going to be discussing isolation, the curse of caregivers. And oh my goodness, there are so many statistics out there that talk about isolation and caregivers and how detrimental it is. Then on Wednesday, September the 7th at 10 o'clock, Sherry Fairman, I do not know Sherry, but I think this is an interesting topic, using a positive approach when you're dealing with the dementia experience. And so it just continues. We talk about dementia a lot on the Caregiver Teleconnection because there's such a void, and Tam will second this, there's such a void of information and support out there for caregivers of people with dementia of all kinds. Anyone else have a question, comment, want to talk about football for a moment? Go Kansas City Chiefs. Sorry, Molly. And go Red Raiders, guns up.
Bang, bang.
Yep. Well, we do have to find our humor in the midst of some of the depressing information that we share every day. But like Tam says, it's something that has to be said, got to be brought out of the closet. We've got to talk about it. We've got to normalize those conversations. Any final comments, Tam?
It's just, it's hard conversations to have. And I encourage you to try to do it, to just, it's tough. We're asking you to add one more thing to your plate, and it's a lot that's already on there. But know that it will strengthen your bond with your child. It will show your child we take care of our own. It will continue to strengthen your family bond. And all of those things mean your loved one will get better care, period. That's it. That's it, Glenda. That's all.
That's it. My closing comments are, remember that you are modeling the behavior for when this might happen to you down the way with your children and grandchildren. And I think about that. My grandson's 19 now. I'm going to be 20 this month. But I still try and model behaviors of caring, that when I get the time where I want him to care for me, that he will have those behaviors and it'll just be natural. And so I think that's part of what we're doing here too, Tam, is helping people help their children to be wonderful, caring adults. So thank you so much for joining us today. I really had fun, and in spite of the topic, Tam, as always.
We try.
What?
We try.
We try.
We try.
Yes, we do. Thank you so much for joining us, taking time out of your busy day. I hope to see you on future calls. And Tam, thank you again for being with us today and sharing this wonderful information. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.